Time cards with our preview of the Major League Baseball season with my man Philmington. Philmington, say hi.
Yo, what's going on? It is Philmington. I'm excited for this. Fantasy baseball season is looming. This is awesome.
Today's March 1st, so in the past, March 1st has always signified the beginning of baseball season for me. We got football firmly in our rearview mirror, and now until really the NBA and NHL playoffs get here, I have nothing to look forward to other than baseball. So this is our inaugural broadcast together. So excuse us for the rough edges here, but we're going to do a preview of the top possibly 100 players, or we're going to play it by ear to see how many we get to and see how much diarrhea of the mouth we have.
Yeah, and you got this on public, right? Anybody joining it?
I do have it on public. I have the chat up, so not yet, which is odd because usually jump in right away. So I hope it's on public. All right, well, I guess we'll press on here. When you're on, and again, and not only is this our maiden voyage together, but we've also never done Google Hangout before, so the chat is a little different. Whereas before, when I go on by myself, the chat is prevalent on the right hand side. Now with the group chat, it doesn't even show how many people are currently in the room.
Hey, so there's 4 people on. I logged in through my phone, and there's a bunch of people that are chatting. So we got Sports Kids came here first. It appears Mrs. Airtime, Mark from Kentucky, Wicked Discounts, and W Vogs. So
give Card Crew credit for doing this Google Hangout test to begin with, because I and my wife's looking in and she just got home from work. I cannot even see the chat here.
No. Use your app through the phone. You know what I'm saying? Use YouTube. Actually log into YouTube. It's a different it's not the same chat that's on. That's a Google Hangouts chat between me and you only for the people that are in Google Hangouts, I think. So yeah, Wicked Discounts is confirmed that. So
is that right, Wicked? I know you're a veteran at this now. You've done it a couple times already. Is that right? Whoa, now we're going to get the echo. We don't want the echo. Card Crew had enough echo for a lifetime, their first time out the gate.
Yeah, everybody's confirming that in YouTube. So
okay.
Well, multiple devices, but still, this Google Hangouts thing's still pretty sweet and ideal for live stream.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm surprised that when you go live by yourself, you get the comments on the chat board, but when you hang out, you don't. That's
right. It's still in the beta phases, I guess. They'll fully integrate it eventually.
Take some getting used to. All right. Well,
we've got 7.
Inauspicious start. Hey, boss, how you doing? Sports Kids, Wicked. All right, now I got y'all. All right, so let's get right into it. And I was talking with Philmington a little bit earlier before we went live, and me personally, the top half of the draft is a little, I don't know, boring, shall we say, because it's pretty standard, the first 10, 15, 20 picks. But we'll go through them anyway and get some of your guys' opinion on the way. Do we have any fantasy baseball players out there? I see Sports Kids. Sports Kids, you're in the league. Hey, Mark from Kentucky, how you doing, man? All right, so to start out, obviously, no big surprise. We got Mike. The top 3 is pretty much uniform in any draft that I've seen go on so far, and that's Mike Trout, number 1, Mookie Betts, number 2, and Jose Ramirez, number 3. Phil, do you have any reason why you would jump someone at this top, or you just play it like it should be 1, 2, 3.
All three of those three top guys are all, they're all pretty safe. They don't come with a lot of injury risk.
And again, that's what you're looking for in the first round is safe.
Yeah, right. And Jose Ramirez is the newest guy to that list. He hasn't been featured in the first round yet. Still very young. He was awesome last year. Great ability to hit the ball hard and with authority. He hit over 30 home runs, I believe, for the first time last year, and with a lot of speed. So I guess the one thing with him is his offense isn't quite as good. He lost Edwin, and Francisco Lindor is coming into the season a little banged up, but Ramirez is a guy that you can count on for a bunch of extra base hits, decent average, a little bit of speed. I don't know if we're going to see 30 steals again, but even if we see 25, that's pretty sweet, and maybe 30 home runs plus. So.
He did, and as I mentioned to you earlier in our little pregame show, it's been a long time since I've seen someone with his type of skill set, where he hits for power, the speed, but he puts the bat on the ball, which nowadays, just putting the ball in play, there's something to be said for that, because there's not a lot of players that do that on a consistent basis anymore.
Yeah, you could have argued a case for him to win the MVP, but he faded quite a bit in his last 35 games or so.
Yeah, last couple of weeks went downhill from there.
Yeah, in some leagues he might not be eligible at second base, but double bonus if he is. So I think he had 17 games played there or something last year.
I see on the chat people are already throwing their sleepers out there, and you guys are right. That's kind of why I mentioned right off the bat where the first couple rounds are kind of boring, because you got to play it safe with players that aren't injury prone, or generally what kind of stats they're going to give you. The more the fun comes into play when, as you guys are doing in the chat, you're prognosticating, your sleepers, who's going to break out, finish the season 150 spots, 100 spots above where they're being drafted now. And really that's where you win or lose leagues, in the later rounds. Sorry, Phil.
I was gonna say, I know we're not supposed to talk about these guys, but I know Matt Chapman, Mark from Kentucky. I definitely agree with that guy. He is a stud, of course, defensively. I think he won Defensive Player of the Year, but he also, I think, he had 25 doubles and a 950 OPS in the second half. So maybe something up there with batted average balls in play, but still, even if he's a 250 hitter, that guy is going to contribute. And
I know we're kind of straying off the course here, but right. Matt Chapman's a great guy to talk about. But someone like him is a person that the only knock I'd have against him, and it's important when you're talking about fantasy baseball, is the ballpark in which he plays, and he plays in a great pitcher's ballpark with a lot of foul territory, and big dimensions and everything. So before we go on, I just want to mention real quick, the rankings that we're doing are straight from, what was the site that we're using, Phil?
Fantasypros.com. That's going to give you aggregated data based on real previous drafts. ESPN, Yahoo, CBS should be on it. Right now they're not, but there's it's pulling data from various sites where there's already been drafts. So.
Yeah, and again, these are rankings based on a standard 5x5 league, stats: 5 offensive, 5 pitching, and 12 team snake draft. No auction or anything like that. All right, so moving on, we're already behind because we're going on and on. All right, the average draft. Good players 4 through 6. I have Max Scherzer, JD Martinez, and Francisco Lindor. Obviously, Lindor, you've got an injury risk there. He's going to. Have you heard the latest, Phil, on how much of the beginning of the season, he's going to miss?
Last I heard, opening days in jeopardy, 4 to 7 week timetable. This is an injury that could hamper his running ability, so watch for that early in the season. You might be giving up some steals there. I wouldn't drop him too much, but I certainly wouldn't be taking him 6 now. Maybe towards the end of the first round or beginning of the second round. Yeah,
I mean, anytime opening day is in jeopardy, especially as you get towards a live draft, people are going to let him fall a little bit, as you mentioned, down towards the bottom of the first. And Max Scherzer, he's pretty much a sure thing as you can get in terms of fantasy baseball for strikeouts, wins. I think he's still playing for a good team, even though, of course, he lost Bryce Harper today officially, or yesterday, to the Phillies. Still has a nice offense to give him plenty of run support. And he should fare well.
Agreed.
Okay, and then rounding out the rest of the first round, I'm going to give you 7 through 12. And Phil, let me know if any of these stick out to you as someone who could potentially finish the year in the top 5, or any you don't think should be in the first round of any draft. And that's Christian Yelich, Nolan Arenado, Trey Turner, Chris Sale, Jacob deGrom, and Jose Altuve.
All right, I'll bring up 3 of those players right here. So Christian Yelich, taking him 7th. I always err on the side of caution when you think you've seen the player's best year. Looking back, I don't know, 5 or 10 years or so, Joe Mauer, people that paid for his career year certainly were let down when they took him in the first round the year after that. So Christian Yelich, I probably would avoid in the first round. Trey Turner is interesting. Trey Turner, I know, you shouldn't really take into account what a player's or manager says about like their aspirations for what the guy should do during the year. Like with Trey Turner specifically, I'm talking about stolen bases. There's been talks that his owner has said that they want him to run and steal 75, maybe 80 bases this year. And even if he gets to 60, that guy, he could become a top 5 player quite easily. He had a bit of a down year last year, but even, for most players' standards, that was still
a down year. Yeah, was top round worthy.
Yeah.
And again, as you said, even if he goes 60 stolen bases, that would be enough to lead the league. Obviously, as stolen base guys are really a dying breed.
Yeah, and on that topic, Jose Altuve, who I was going to bring up, you could argue that you should be taking that guy 4th, given
Absolutely. Last year he did
versus other positions. His year last year went downhill as soon as he was diagnosed with the I think a knee fracture after he slid into second base, and that really capped his power in the second half. And there's no reason why he shouldn't return to a top 5 type player.
I agree.
That's safe is like a Nolan Arenado, and you got those steals, which are so hard to find, as you said.
I agree. That's the one player where I really think that falls at the bottom of this round. It can easily make the top 5. As you mentioned, he went number 4 last year in most drafts, and should project to be back up there. And again, I wanted to mention that we have Sports Kids comment. Yes, we will get to the underrated guys, probably not in this video because you're throwing a lot of good names out there. We might do it on Philmington's next video because we do have part 2 of this coming up. If not, we'll do a part 3. We'll do whatever it takes, but we'll definitely hit on those players as well. Okay. Oh, and the other 2 starting pitchers in the first round there were Chris Sale and Jacob deGrom. DeGrom, some might argue you're paying a little high for him coming off of his Cy Young season, but the guy's for real. I know he's 30 years old. However, a lot of people say, he's 30 years old. He's going to start his downturn soon. But I completely disagree with that because you have to remember he didn't start pitching. He was a shortstop most of his minor league career and didn't start pitching until his early 20s. So even though he's 30 years old, he really has the arm of, say, a 24-year-old, 25-year-old, in terms of wear. So do not shy away from Jacob deGrom because he's 30 years old now. Okay, round 2. I'm going to give you the top half of round 2 and your thoughts, Phil. We got Manny Machado, Ronald Acuna, everyone's big rookie that they loved last year, Alex Bregman, who I know you love, Javier Baez, Paul Goldschmidt, and Corey Kluber. That's your top half of the second round.
Yeah, so Manny Machado, he's an interesting case. He went to a ballpark where it's not really the best situation for him. If you compare it to Baltimore, which he spent most of his career time there. He is, of course, eligible at shortstop, which helps, but that's a very deep position this year. But Machado, a guy of his skill set, I think his stats will pretty much translate anywhere. He does have these interesting splits where he has his OPS in his career was a lot greater at home, but I don't know if that's a Camden Yards thing, or I don't know if that's just like I feel more comfortable playing for my home stadium thing. But
yeah, his numbers were down a little bit in LA.
Yeah, in Machado, he still performed at home in LA, so that OPS translated there, and that's kind of a pitcher's ballpark. So I think Machado's fine at that spot. Acuna, I love his baseball cards. You've seen any of my videos, but I don't know if I would take him there when you can get Juan Soto a couple rounds later. Alex Bregman, I love him there.
Although Acuna's got the speed.
What was that?
I just said you compared him to Soto. I
Yeah,
just said Acuna's got
the
really
speed, right?
25 stolen base potential, which is why I
That,
think you see the difference in their draft position.
that makes sense. And we're not talking a points league where Soto would get more credit for his walks and stuff like that. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I get that. So that's a valid point. Alex Bregman, I think he's gotten some like minor procedure to get some loose bodies removed from his elbow recently. I think
yeah.
that's
But they
overblown. I
say
think
it's a non-issue. They say, well, they say.
he walked more than he struck out in his age 25 season, which is ridiculous. You probably
Crazy.
didn't see that from Joey Votto. And I know walks don't count, but it's a great indicator for a guy that can maintain a high batting average, then focus on maybe hitting more fly balls like Bregman did. He had a bunch of home runs last year, so look for him to hit around 30 home runs again. His average, look for that to be 300 plus going forward. A great lineup. So Bregman is a great pick there. Of course, he's shortstop eligible himself too.
Which is
And
huge. Yeah.
Goldschmidt is heading into an interesting situation where maybe his lineup's a little bit better, but that's one of the top pitching ballparks. So he should pretty much stay the same. At 17, he's probably actually a value. I mean, he's been a perennial first round type guy. And Javier Baez, who I skipped over, I think so I got to spend a few seconds on this guy. So Baez had a ridiculous year last year. For him to duplicate what he did, he needs to maintain a really high batting average balls in play. He needs to maintain a 20 to 25% home run to fly ball ratio, and he needs to steal a lot of bases, which he didn't really do a whole lot in the second half. So you're betting on a lot there. I think this is a bust written all over him. I think at best he's going to perform as well as like a third rounder. So I might take him in the fourth round just because I'm very wary of his floor.
I'd like to argue with you, just for the sake of argument, but I can't. I agree with everything you said. He's a free swinger. Yeah, he's got great potential, but I think that leads to him also having great potential for a down season as well. So
yeah, he strikes out a lot. He does his share of swings and misses. So
for a top, let's see, 16 player, I like a little more safety in my pick there, and there's just a lot of risk there in him. But I'm granted the talent's there, but a lot of risk. And Paul Goldschmidt at 17. The only thing I wanted to add to that was this is the first draft in a long time I can remember where there's no first baseman in the top 12 in the first round. Paul Goldschmidt is actually the first in every draft I've seen. He's the first baseman off the board, which is kind of odd that your first baseman, where you're known for getting all your power and RBIs and whatnot in fantasy, is at number pick 17. So that's a little odd.
It is
more odd than usual.
Makes Goldschmidt a little underrated, but yeah, first base definitely appears more shallow than usual.
And of course, Goldie always throws in some stolen bases. Marco, and to your point on Alex Bregman, aside from all the stats that you threw out there and how great he is offensively, which I completely agree, shortstop eligible. Mark from Kentucky's throwing names out there, George Springer and Carlos Correa, which just go along with the other point about Bregman that I wanted to bring up, and that's that he's just in an absolutely loaded lineup. So, I mean, I could see him easily 100-plus runs scored, 100-plus RBIs to go along with everything else, because that lineup is just stacked, and in a great hitter's park as well.
Yep.
All right, so bottom half of the second round, we've got Aaron Judge, Bryce Harper. Now, this is Bryce Harper at pick 20, so maybe this website hasn't updated, but I think Bryce Harper's going to climb now into the first round. Now that we know he's going to be playing in a great hitter's park in Citizens Bank and not in a great pitcher's park of Dodger Stadium or San Francisco. So I would definitely expect to see Bryce Harper's ADP go up. Additionally, in the bottom half of the second round, we got Giancarlo Stanton, Freddie Freeman, Justin Verlander, and Trevor Story. Now, I have a couple players on here that I would never pick this early. But first, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this bottom half of the second round.
Well, this is interesting. You have some interesting names here that didn't fulfill their potential from last year. Bryce Harper being one, of course. I think he should trend up because that, like you said, Citizens Bank Park is a great hitter's ballpark, especially for left-handed hitters like Harper that hit the ball in the air. Giancarlo Stanton, he's just such an enigma. Like, are we going to see the 2017 version or the 2018 version where the guy struck out like 25 to 30% of the time? I don't know. Freddie Freeman, he is a guy I really want to like a lot. And he was actually, if you snap the at the All-Star game, do a snapshot of where all those players stood. He was the National League favorite to win MVP at that time and did absolutely nothing after that, especially from a power perspective. So I don't know if we're going to see the 35 home run hitting version of Freeman, which he has shown at least on a per game basis at in spurts of his career, or what he did in the second half. So, and Justin Verlander is a guy who just turned what, like 36? Is he going to throw? Is he going to get another 290 Ks? Trevor Story, again, are we going to see the 2018 version or the 2017 version? 2018 version is pretty damn good, but you can't just discount or completely throw out 2017, where he didn't have like 37 home runs and 27 steals. So I don't know. These guys are so hard, but some of these guys will be values and some will be busts. I just don't know which ones really.
And I think we're on the same wavelength there because, as I mentioned, there's a couple guys who project higher than I'd like to pick at that spot, and I think you were kind of onto something there, reading my mind when you said Verlander at his age, 36. I know he says he wants to pitch into his 40s, but as a power pitcher, I really don't see that happening, or at least effectively anyway. Granted, he's got plenty of run support there in Houston. So I think the wins and strikeouts might be there, but I think this might be the year where you start to see his ERA and WHIP a little more inflated than you'd like. And Trevor Story, for the same reasons I don't like Javier Baez at number 16. I don't like Trevor Story at pick number 14. But the fact that Trevor Story has trouble putting the ball in play, I know he had great numbers last year, but it's frustrating when you have a player in Colorado where really the most important thing you want him to do is put the bat on the ball, because you will accidentally get hits in Colorado with all that space, with that spacious outfield, and Trevor Story can be a little aggravating if you have him on his fantasy team and he's just putting up strikeout after strikeout. So I definitely tend to stay away from him, at least at pick number 24. And for the same reasons, I absolutely love Daniel Murphy, but we'll get to him later on because he's someone who's just going to put up some crazy good numbers in Colorado this year. Mark Kentucky still throwing out some great names.
Yeah,
I'm an Aaron Nola lover, man. I mean, he was just ridiculous last year, and now with Bryce, I'm really looking forward to what kind of season he has. Okay, moving along, third round. Speaking of which, Aaron Nola is projected to be the 25th pick, the first pick of the third round, followed by Garrett Cole, Charlie Blackmon, Blake Snell, Andrew Benintendi, and I know you're going to have some things to say about this one. Number 30, Clayton Kershaw. So what do you think about the top half of the third round, Phil?
Well, like you said, I have something to say about Kershaw. So his value hasn't been fully adjusted. He's another one based on, what happened, the most recent news about him having, them having to bring him along slowly. And so the story with Kershaw is he was trying to rediscover the velocity that he had lost last year in the offseason, and he hurt himself by doing that. So this is one of the years where he's actually coming into the season banged up already and pretty damn early into the season. So, I mean, he came into last year more healthy than he's ever been, he said, and he still ended up being hurt. The back, just everything's connected, the back, the lat, the arm. I would drop that guy down like maybe two tiers in the
left shoulder. I don't think he ever had. I mean, he's had back problems before and arm problem, but I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time that he's had shoulder problem, which right away is a red flag to me anyway. I know he threw off a flat ground today, but opening day certainly in jeopardy, even though they did announce him as the opening day starter. So we'll have to stay tuned on that.
The other guy I want to talk about here in this group, and then I'll let you take over, is Benintendi. He had a terrible second half. If you compare his first half stats to Christian Yelich, who last year they kind of came in like neck and neck ranking wise. Yeah. They were really comparable. You could argue that Benintendi was a better first half player than Yelich, who won the MVP in the National League. And then Benintendi did absolutely nothing in the second half, and he's kind of a good candidate for like a bounce back type season. I would argue that he has a better chance to win the MVP over JD Martinez because of his defensive contributions. So.
And you just stole my thunder, because my pick for the American League most valuable player this year coming in at pick number 29 is Andrew Benintendi. I just think for the same reasons I love Alex Bregman, I love Andrew Benintendi. He's got the pedigree for sure. And in that stacked lineup, again, he's a guy that can go 100 and 100 on the runs scored and RBIs. I think he might run a little bit more. He's got speed. The power is still developing. And I really think he's going to wreak havoc in the AL East this year. And as you said, in the first half last year, I'm personally glad that he fell off on the second half, because in all my leagues, I'm looking to really get him for a bargain at pick number 29 for someone who I think can potentially give us first round potential there for sure.
Yeah.
And the other names, I think you know what you're going to get. I think you're going to see more of the same out of Aaron Nola, Garrett Cole, Blackman, Blake Snell. I don't think that was a fluke with Snell. I think they're all safe bets right there. But Charlie Blackman actually fell a lot. I believe last year his ADP was going towards the end of the first round, and now we got him down at pick number 27, which is kind of interesting. I think he's going to have a solid year again. And I believe they're actually moving him to right field. They're going to be using Ian Desmond in center field this year, which is to make room for Daniel Murphy at first. So I think that reshuffling around the lineup is just going to help Blackman as well with a better lineup around him. All right, moving on to the bottom half of the third round. Who we got? We got Stupid Stop Motion. Thanks for joining us, Pete Miller, and Remember the Great Sports. Thank you guys for joining. All right, bottom of the third round, we have Chris Bryant, former late first rounder. We got Luis Severino, Whit Merrifield, your boy Juan Soto, Trevor Bauer, and Anthony Rizzo rounding out the third round. What do you think about those 6 names, Phil?
Chris Bryant is a very intriguing one. If he can prove to be healthy, he can be a massive bargain at this position. I mean, you're looking at a guy who already won National League Rookie of the Year, and I believe as well MVP in the following season. A power guy, pretty damn good lineup. Wasn't good last year, but they should be better this year. And good run RBI potential there. Maybe some steals too with him. So if his shoulders,
he throws in some steals too, which is nice out of a first baseman.
Right. And, yep, exactly. And Severino's. I think, too many innings the year before maybe did him in, where he just got tired late in the season. He was really ineffective. So I don't know what to think of him. If he's healthy, he's going to be a stud. A lot of wins there at playing for the Yankees, and with that really stacked bullpen. Merrifield's a guy that's there because steals are so scarce. It's hard to find a guy that you can count on for 30-plus steals. Last year, he actually led the league. Kind of a sad year, but the guys that have like 20 steals and below, you can't really count on for even like 10 plus, because that tends to be very variable. So that's why like the D Gordons, the Merrifields are just so valuable. Juan Soto, awesome player. Somebody's going to have to fill in the shoes of Harper. And I always felt like he had unrealized potential anyways. Harper always seemed to be kind of a letdown, always very inconsistent. I think Soto has a chance to be that guy that fills his shoes quite nicely from an offensive perspective. Trevor Bauer, you could argue that he should have finished like top 3 in the Cy Young. Had the injury to his knee. He took a line drive comebacker back to the knee. I think in late August, he missed 5 weeks, and he wasn't even in like the top 5 or Cy Young voting. But Trevor Bauer, that guy could be the best pitcher on the Indians now. Stacked pitching rotation. He broke out at age 28, but sometimes it just takes a while. And Rizzo, he's interesting. I don't know what to think of him here. He's kind of a boring player. Last year, he struggled a bit against lefties, I think, which he hadn't previous to that in his career. So should see a turnaround from Rizzo. Not a lot of speed, but a pretty good lineup. And that's probably a safe pick, I'd say, especially with first base being pretty scarce.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned about Rizzo against lefties, and I noticed this a lot last season watching a lot of when I catch Cubs games, is I just found that left-handers, because as you know, he really takes away the outside part of the plate by standing over it. I just noticed, or maybe it was just me, I thought left-handers really busted him in a lot, willing to hit him if it did, and I think that took away from his numbers, because a lot of left-handers tried to take back. The scouting report is finally out on him after it took a few years that you got to bust him in, and I saw a lot of left-handers doing so. And now the other two players I wanted to address here, I got to go with Juan Soto here. I think this is, I'm sorry, Philmington, I think this is way too high for Juan Soto, pick number 34. No track record. He's a 20-year-old. Last year was 19, playing at 20 years old this year. Just too many variables at play. Losing Bryce Harper out of the lineup, so the lineup takes a little bit of a hit there. The sophomore slump. We've seen it time and time again. The book's out on him. He does take his walks, but now with Bryce Harper out of the lineup, is he going to try to push and swing more? I just think that, I mean, he's a great player. I'm not saying he's not going to have a great career. I just think I'd like to see a little bit more of a track record from a then 19-year-old, now 20-year-old. For me to pick him in the third round. And Trevor Bauer, to me, this is a little bit of a dicey situation here because he had words detrimental to the Indians front office a few weeks ago, where I guess it was an arbitration hearing, and he was very upset at some of the, how general managers to win their arbitration case will speak down upon a player, and they did that against Trevor Bauer. So rumors are in spring training that he's not a happy camper. And for someone picking in the third round in terms of fantasy baseball, that always scares me a little bit because where there's smoke, there's fire, and you could end up, it could just be a sticky situation. That's all I'm trying to say there. All right, so that will bring us to our fourth round of our ADP. Look at the 2019 season. And at the beginning of the fourth round, we have Thor, Noah Syndergaard, who in his first outing in spring training is already throwing 100 miles an hour. I don't know if that's good or not. We got Carlos Carrasco, Chris Davis with a K out there in Oakland, Starling Marte, Walker Buehler. Let me say that one again. Walker Buehler at pick number 41. And Rhys Hoskins at 42. That's a look at the top half of a fourth round draft. What do you think of that about those six players, Phil?
Syndergaard, I really don't know. I mean, what are you going to get? Are you going to get 200 innings? Or are you going to get 130 innings? It's just so hard. It's displaced gambling with a lot of these picks. Carlos Carrasco, very good pitcher, but he's getting up there in age. What is he, like 32, 33 now? And I don't know if we can count on him for another 200 innings, although he has been very durable aside from last year.
I think the injuries he had were like leg injuries, if I remember correctly, an ankle or something. So I don't see any reason for alarm there.
Right. Chris Davis, he's as consistent as they come. So he's an outlier here versus a lot of the other guys. But what, 247, 44 home runs?
Watch it down every year.
Yeah. So he's probably a good pick there. Starling Marte, I think he's a sneaky upside pick there. He's a guy that could have like second round potential. Combo of steals and home runs. I think he had a dry stretch last year. He's known to be a little inconsistent. Walker Buehler, I'm a huge fan of Walker Buehler, but given the big innings jump last year, I don't know how many innings we'll see from him this year. He didn't really pitch much in 2017, and I think he's a guy that will be in the top 5 starting pitchers, maybe in 2020, 2021. But I just don't know what we'll see from him this year, innings wise. The Dodgers, even with the Kershaw news, are still going to be the Vegas favorite to win the pennant in the National League. And Rhys Hoskins, he had I think like 20 home runs in the second half. And I know Jeff's probably a big fan of him too. We're big on guys that have good. Really nice plate disciplines. Hoskins knows how to take a walk. He also knows how to hit a home run when he needs to. So that's my take on those guys.
And with the further lineup support, you gotta like Rhys Hoskins, whether he bats behind Harper or in front of Harper. You gotta love the potential there. Walker Buehler, I know you like him a little more than I do. I don't dislike him, but I'm just very wary of him. He pitched a lot of innings last year. I think the Dodgers are going to be ultra conservative to him because I think their eyes are really towards the playoffs. And of course, in fantasy baseball, you don't get any points for the playoffs. So I think they might pull the dial back on him a little bit. I think he might be hard pressed to get more than 100 and I don't know 40 innings, 150 innings this year. I think they might come up with a phantom injury for him once or twice during the season. And Starling Marte, I think that's as we talked about stolen bases earlier. That's a guy probably big Wicked Discounts is probably a big fan of this guy. He is going to be a cheap, if you consider a number 40 pick overall, a cheap source. But I think he has the potential to get 40, 50 stolen bases without a doubt. And I think every fantasy team needs that one big stolen base guy. So this might be the angle to go there on your big stolen base guy. Okay, and that brings us to the bottom half of the fourth round, which is Anthony Rendon, who I absolutely love. He's going to be the focal point now of the Washington offense. Cody Bellinger, Carlos Correa, and here comes our first forecasting what a player is going to do. Vladimir Guerrero. I think it's no secret he'll probably start the season in the minors and come up May 1st. Edwin Diaz, as we see our first closer coming off the board at the end of the fourth round. And someone who's probably near and dear to your heart, Xander Bogaerts. What are your thoughts on those six guys?
All right, so Anthony Rendon, very underrated. Take away the first 3 weeks last year, he had ridiculous stats. This guy probably had a better offensive WAR than Bryce Harper did each of the last 2 seasons. Everybody's talking about Harper, so yeah. Rendon, look for him to step up in that lineup, and I think he's a fine value there in round 4 or so. Cody Bellinger, here's another guy that could bounce back. He for Cody Bellinger's standards, he had a very down year, but he was still pretty effective. They've got to play him every day, though. They do still have a pretty stacked team, but he's going to find his at-bats, and he's going to have a year closer to 2017, I feel, in 2019. Carlos Correa is interesting because here's another guy like Bellinger with a ridiculous pedigree. He battled last year injuries of, I believe, his back, as well as his he had a deviated septum procedure, and I know there was something else that was bothering him. In the offseason, he took up the yoga, so maybe that'll help his back.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay.
Yeah,
that can't hurt.
But if you recall from 2017 when the Astros won the World Series, he proposed to his girlfriend, and I found 2 sources in Houston that told me that the relationship with his girlfriend was not good for his performance on the field. Living with somebody for the first time, I don't know if they're married yet or if it's still his fiance, but
women, they'll get you every time.
Yeah. Vlad Guerrero, I actually think is a good value at 46. I don't know if there's ever been a player with no major league time that's, if you take out guys like maybe Ohtani or Ichiro, or I don't know where they're placed, but Yu Darvish, those guys don't really count. But 46 for a guy in AAA that hasn't showed anything in the majors yet, but I actually feel really confident with Vlad. A lot of these guys, Chris Bryant, Evan Longoria, Ronald Acuna, they've outperformed their projections. A lot of times it was like, oh, don't buy the hype, but then they've done it. And they've just the track records of these players that have been coming up with no experience in doing it and succeeding at that major league level is just more common now. I think Vlad, given his, I don't know if there's been a hitting pedigree like his for as long as I can remember. Bill James scale, we're talking an 80 hit tool on a scale of 20 to 80. Mike Trout didn't have that. So I think Vlad has a good chance of outperforming number 46. Edwin Diaz, I think that's fine. The first closer at the 5th round, that's usually about where they start going. Xander Bogaerts,
consistent.
He can do a lot of everything. He's not going to be beast in any one category.
Yeah.
Or maybe runs. RBIs are going to be pretty good. Hitting in the front of that, pretty good. That stacked lineup, not as good as Houston, but almost. And then of course you got some steals. I don't know if he's going to get 20. He probably won't get 30 home runs, but he might get 20. So yeah, I think that's a fine pick there.
Yeah. 2 guys I wanted to address real quick were Cody Bellinger. I don't know why, but I've never been a fan of his. Perhaps it's that enormous swing of his where he's just got his while his hot streaks tend to be really good, his cold streaks tend to be really long and bad. So until he, I don't want to say cuts down his swing because I know that'll take away from the player that he is, but I just feel like he's the type of player that always might hurt you in the batting average. But he will throw in a few stolen bases for you out of the first base position, which you might not get in a whole lot of first basemen out there. And Carlos Correa down at pick number 45. I just think that's a hidden gem right there. The past 2 years, he's been a top 20 player. I think in last year he was even maybe picked at the end of the first round with that lineup potential. And as you touched on, his pedigree, there's a lot to love there in Carlos Correa. And I could foresee him even having as good a year of any of the other studs in the lineup as Altuve or Bregman, because as you said, the pedigree is there and he has a tremendous skill set. So that could be a guy that wins you your league, picking him if you're lucky enough to get him at pick number 45 and he puts up top 10 numbers. That's the type of player that could help you win your league. And I just wanted to mention Edwin Diaz at 47, as you said, first closer off the board. Are you one of the guys generally in your league to start off a closer run, or do you tend to wait on saves? Because I know the old adage is you can find saves anywhere throughout the season, but nothing's worse than watching your pitcher just get imploded upon in the ninth inning, giving up 5-6 runs. So are you a guy that goes and spends a fourth-round draft pick on a closer?
I don't think so. I mean, I would break them down into tiers. Maybe I'll try to grab one of the last guys in the first couple tiers if it's the right time. But in auction leagues, we're not talking about the auction as the reference here. We're talking about snake drafts. But I might spend the most on a closer if I think Chapman is a good deal or Jansen is a good deal. Of course, those guys aren't the top closers now, but in the past, sometimes I would do that.
Okay, now that's the end of the fourth round. Before we get to, I think we'll probably have time to do. We wanted to keep the video to around about an hour, so we'll probably have time to do one or two more rounds. I just wanted to address the chat a little bit because there's a couple good questions in there, and the one coming from my buddy Joe iPhone, who's asking, "What's your take on Dallas Keuchel and Craig Kimbrell? Pick them or wait and pick them now before they sign with a team, or wait and see who they sign with." If you have a draft coming up this week, what are your thoughts on those two players, Phil?
Well, good question, Joe. I would say Kimbrell is a guy that I would pick now because I think wherever he goes, he's going to be dominant. We saw a brief stint of him not being effective in the playoffs, but it was a mechanical glitch that he perfected for the most part in the World Series. So Kimbrell, I would take. Dallas Keuchel. I'm curious as to what you think of him, Jeff, but I don't really. I try to stay away from guys that don't get like close to a strikeout per inning, and that's because the margin of error is a lot smaller. They have to be very, very effective in order to be consistently good from start to start. And Dallas Keuchel he's had a Cy Young year. He's had years where he's been very effective. But last year, the league had adjusted to him. It occurred, and even if he goes to the National League, it would be better for him, of course. But he's not a guy I'd be taking in the top 25 starters.
I know. Let me preface by saying I know Dallas Keuchel is the notorious Yankee killer. For that reason alone, I could see an American League team signing him. But and I've said this in other videos before, as a Phillies fan. I'm kind of glad that the Phillies signed Bryce Harper because obviously not only to have Bryce, but I think that might preclude them from going out and spending $100 million on Dallas Keuchel. I do not think he's worth it. A soft tossing lefty does not excite me. He wants the same kind of contract that Patrick Corbin got down in Washington, and Corbin, I think, is twice the pitcher that Keuchel is in terms of stuff-wise, his nasty slider and everything. I think whatever team signs him will live to regret that. I know he's a ground ball pitcher, so it might not matter what park he pitches in, but I just think he's asking for too many years and too much money, which is actually why Kimbrell hasn't signed yet either, because I think he wants 5 years, $100 million, which is a long way to go for a relief pitcher. Although I do think whatever team gets him will reap the awards of signing him. Let's see. And we'll do one more question real quick. The Cleveland Indians. Phil, I know you mentioned earlier you're a little nervous about their banged up offense going into the season, but You also mentioned that you really like their pitching staff. Would you put their pitching staff at atop of any other American League's pitching staff?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Houston would be a close second, if not first. But their top three is definitely the best in the majors, I'd say. If you're talking about just the Indians and not just pitching specific, I think the Indians underperformed last year. I think they only won about 90 games. I had them as a dark horse candidate to win the World Series, and I'm a Red Sox fan.
Oh wow.
I just thought their starting pitching was really deep. Their offense was really strong, and they just underperformed in the playoffs. I think a lot of it was because their bullpen sucked last year, and it was really good the few years before that with Andrew Miller and company.
Yeah. The Indians, I think playing in that division will really serve them well, and they might be able to back off a few of those pitchers down the stretch in September, and really make another good run deep into the playoffs this year. So I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be back in the ALCS this year with a top three like that and a loaded offense.
Yeah.
Although I have no idea what the heck they're doing with Carlos Santana. I was glad to get rid of him as a Phillies fan, but I have absolutely no idea what their plans are. Maybe they see something in him that I don't.
100 walks. 100 walks.
Yeah, the walks. If you're playing in a 10-by-10 league with walks, you might go after Carlos Santana. All right, fifth round, top of the fifth round. We're looking at picks number 49 through 54. So here's where the aforementioned Patrick Corbin and James Paxton are going right next to each other. Eugenio Suarez, George Springer, our first catcher off the board, JT Realmuto, and Ozzie Albies. Your thought on that six, Phil?
Patrick Corbin, there's a lot to like there. Nasty season last year. He's got the stuff, as you pointed out, Jeff. James Paxton, the great Maple. A lot of, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I won't talk about him. Eugenio Suarez, I don't know if we'll see a 35 home run version of him or a 25 home run version, but I think what he showed last year, the stats are legit, completely founded there. His performance, it wasn't a fluke. I think he had a lot of maybe more fly balls than he did traditionally, but he could continue that pace. And I think he had some of the hardest, one of the greatest, hard hit percentages. One of the sabermetric stats, advanced stats that I saw in baseball. George Springer, he's usually around there. He's always a fifth round pick, and I think he's fine there. Coming off an off year, he could actually potentially perform as a third round pick. So maybe he's a little underrated, being in that stacked lineup with that great ballpark situation, as you mentioned earlier. JT Realmuto, a lot to like there. He's probably going to be my number one catcher on my rankings once I do them. Moving to a better hitter park situation. It's not even close.
A lot better, right.
Better lineup too. Ozzie Albies, I don't know, man. I liked him a lot heading into last year. I liked him a lot in April and May. Then I don't know what happened afterwards. So what do you think about those guys?
I agree with a lot about what you just said. Hey, Jimmy Guns, thanks for hopping on for a little bit, man. And these six players really, they fall into my categories of a lot of why I would want them on my team. Patrick and Corbin and James Paxton, both for the same reason. They're playing with great offensive support behind them. I don't see any reason why, if I know it's a big if they stay healthy, why they can't win 18 games easily, where wins are really a tough category to procure in fantasy baseball. Eugenio Suarez, absolutely love the park that he plays in. Probably the second best hitter's park in baseball after Coors Field. Same can be said for George Springer. Fantastic ballpark to hit in. He's got immense talent. JT Realmuto, as you said, he's going from probably the most difficult ballpark to hit into to one of the best in Citizens Bank, and a stacked lineup to boot. And the guy's just a workhorse. After the season last year, he went on to play in the baseball All-Stars on that trip they take to the Far East. He caught like a dozen games over there. The guy just loves to play. He might lead the league in games played out of catcher, probably over 140, so which is something you rarely see out of a catcher. The guy's just and he's built like a tank too, so you don't see him breaking down. And Ozzie Albies is the only one on this 6 I might tend to shy away from. I think he might be paying for a little bit of what he did last season as a smallish guy. I don't really know if his power numbers will be duplicated, even though that is a fantastic park to hit in that he plays in. All right, so moving on to the bottom half of the 5th round, we have Steven Strasburg, and this is the lowest I've seen him go in a draft in several years. We have Steven Strasburg at 55, Gleyber Torres. We have Joey Votto all the way down at pick number 57. As you know, by the way, I said that. I think that's Zach Greinke at 58. Blake Trinan, as we see our second closer off the board there. And then we have our second catcher off the board, and Gary Sanchez, rounding out the bottom of the 5th round. What do you think of those 6?
I would say Gleyber Torres, the theme there is similar to Albies. You're paying for a guy that showed more power than what his pedigree suggested in a limited sample size. So Gleyber Torres, his power is really what carried him. But, I mean, I don't know if you're going to see an extrapolation of those stats into a 30 to 35 home run season for him. I just don't know. But, I mean, he does have the pedigree to just be an all-around great hitter and have 3rd round upside. But if you draft him, make sure to put him at second base, where the position is a lot more scarce, than at shortstop, where it's pretty damn stacked, which you'll see once you start to research this a little bit more like we did. Joey Votto, lingering knee issues last year, but that year was a complete mess. Like, I'd like to say it was just an anomaly, and you can just throw it out. But he is, 35 years old now, and he is in better shape for his age than Miguel Cabrera, who I believe is at the same age.
Well, that's not saying a whole lot.
Right. Exactly. But I think
two back surgeries, I think I might be in better shape than Miguel Cabrera.
I think he has a big bounce back season, like Jeff will soon say. I don't really want to talk much about Greinke. Blake Trinan, Edwin Diaz is a bargain, I think, relatively to Trinan, even though he's like 10 or 12 picks before him, I think. And Gary Sanchez, that guy's got a wider range of outcomes than anyone. But I'd say I'd rather take Real Muto 7 picks earlier than Sanchez there.
I agree with everything you said. I just want to touch on Steven Strasburg. I really don't. I'm a little stunned that he's fallen this far. And in years past, he's been a 2nd or 3rd rounder. I know he missed a few starts last year, but Steven Strasburg always misses a few starts. But he always finishes north of 200 strikeouts with a solid ERA and WHIP. And again, for the same reason I like Patrick Corbin, I think he's going to easily get 16 to 18 wins. Joey Votto, I know his power numbers weren't there, and I think a lot of that was just flukish last year. If you look at his outliers, he really there's no reason to suggest he's not going to finish above 25 home runs this year, and he's going to give you a great batting average. Again, just like Suarez, playing in a great hitter's park. I just see upside for him, which is I don't say that a lot about a 35-year-old, but I definitely see a lot of potential there. Conversely, I do not like Zach Greinke at all here. He's lost significant speed off his fastball. I think I watched several games last year where he was maxing out at 90, 93, whereas he was always a mid to upper 90s guy. And even that 93 really, and he's a grunter to begin with when he pitches, if you ever watched him pitch, the 93s were far and few between. Usually he sat around 90. So, and anyone with a decline in velocity, I'm gonna stay away from, and they're gonna run him out there 30 times because I know they tried to trade him over the offseason, but they're paying him like some absurd amount of money. I think $25 million a year. So he's going to get his 30 starts, but I'd be very wary of him. Gary Sanchez can be a big bounce back player this year. He's fallen to 60 and not 20 spots above this because of his struggles last season. I think his defensive struggles really had a lot to do with why he struggled offensively. I know Luis Severino voiced displeasure in pitching to him with all his past balls. Apparently, he doesn't call a great game. But I think he's going to put a lot of that behind him this year and get back to really mashing the ball. I think they're going to use him at DH more this year. So I do see a bounce back for Gary Sanchez. All right, we're going to take a look at one more round, and then we're going to call it an episode. We're going to take a look at the 6th round. And we're going to start off the 6th round. We have Craig Kimbrell, followed by Gene Segura. We have Marcell Ozuna, Jack Flaherty, which you better save him for me, Phil. I absolutely love this guy. A Mike Clevenger, and a Kenley Jansen. What do you think about that group?
Okay, I would say that Craig Kimbrell is a steal at 61, seeing how Kenley Jansen, who's got the heart troubles, is in that list, and how Blake Trinan, who was probably one of the best closers last year, is right before him. So this is an example of don't pay for the year before. Don't pay for 2018 because you're not going to get those stats in 2019. So take Kimbrell over Trinan, because Trinan was a guy who was probably a slightly above average journeyman reliever who all of a sudden turned into a guy who had a really good year. He's not going to do that again. I don't care what the stats say. I don't care how good his whip was. I don't care how many saves he had. It's just not going to happen again. Gene Segura is interesting. I think his value is predicated upon his placement in the lineup. He's going to place a much smaller ballpark. The thick air, too, of Safeco is not really conducive to home run hitters, not named Nelson Cruz. But Gene Segura, Gabe Kapler his coach is a big sabermetric guy. He's been pretty risk averse, I think, on the bases. So I don't know if we're going to see 20 steals from Segura. We might see closer to 12 or so, but that'll be interesting. He's still a good enough hitter where he's going to be useful, but I don't know if he's a value at 62, to be honest. And Jeff will probably disagree. Marcell Ozuna, a guy a couple years removed from a ridiculous career season. Still playing in a big pitcher's ballpark, but is in a improved lineup. He's intriguing at 63. And I already expressed what I thought of Jansen. I'll skip Clevenger.
Okay. I just wanted to address Ozuna. That's a big pitcher's park. I know he's got a better lineup around him now with Goldschmidt. But Ozuna's he's fought injury the last couple of years. So I might tend to stay with him at least at that high of a level. I don't think I'd spend a number 63 pick on him. Maybe down for if he slipped into the 80s or 90s, I'd consider it. But I think that's a lot of risk there. Still too early in the draft to be going for players with injury risk. Craig Kimbrell, as you mentioned, it doesn't matter where he signs. He's going to be one of the elite closers. Gene Segura, I definitely disagree with you there. I think that's a value pick right there. I think he's going to help in all 5 categories. Batting average, he's going to hit 300 in this ballpark. He could easily hit 20 home runs. Speed-wise, yeah, you're right. A lot of his stolen base numbers might be predicated on where he bats in the lineup. But even if he's lower in the order, I still think as much as he gets on base and has the ability to run, I still think he's at the very least a 20 stolen base guy. So I like Gene Segura a lot in what's going to be an excellent Phillies lineup. And Jack Flaherty. I know I did a video about his baseball cards, how much I love this kid. His stuff is absolutely nasty. I mean, he's got octane up 100 miles an hour with a devastating curveball. Big kid, release point. With his release point, he gets on you fast. A great pitcher's park that he plays in, an excellent lineup behind him. There's really nothing to not like. I think they'll unleash him this year. I don't think 200 innings is out of the question on Flaherty, as he's a big, strong kid. I can see him making a run at the National League Cy Young Award, which anytime you can draft a pitcher in the mid-60s that you think can have a shot at the National League Cy Young Award, you jump all over him, because that's again, I think I mentioned earlier with another player, that's the type of player that can win you leagues.
Yeah, I remember Clayton Kershaw the year he won the Cy Young. Could have said the same about Zach Greinke. I mean, those guys were had in picks like probably 75 to 80. So yeah. Hey, before we take off, Mark from Kentucky just brought up Willie Adames. Jeff, tell me what you think about that guy.
Sample size. I don't know if we've had a big enough sample size. Granted, he's got all the pedigree in the world, but I think Tampa Bay's offense leaves a lot to be desired. I think you could probably make a case for him being in the worst lineup in the American League. So, as a young player, as talented as he is, I think he might struggle trying to remain inside himself and doing a little bit more than he's capable of. I do see 15 to 20 home runs. I see some speed there, but I don't see a lot of batting average there. Not yet. I think that can come with time. He's got pedigree, but it depends where. If he fell, I think he's currently
236 on this list. 236.
Is he 236? Yeah, I think that's about right. Whereas there might be some players in the 200s where I'm like, wow, this guy can outperform that by 100 spots. I don't really see that with Adames. I think in the years in the future you might, but not quite yet. How about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same with you. Like you said, small sample size. Being second base eligible helps. Certainly helps his value. But there's other guys you can throw a dart on that would be safer at that position. I mean, you could wait till pick 131 to pick Brian Dozier. He's in a pretty good lineup now, and he claims that he had knee issues last year, and we'll see if that's the case. But Jurickson Profar, I love Rougned Odor. But all in all, if you're in a deep league, then Willie Adames is a guy that could make sense in one of your last picks of the draft.
And I've seen Mark from Kentucky's Willie Adames cards. He is a big fan, big supporter of Willie Adames. And again, he does have great potential. I just think it might be a little soon. They did win 90 games last year, as Mark pointed out. But I think they might be hard pressed to match that total again. And I mean, I think it's great for a small market team to do that, but I'm not so sure that they will playing in the American League East. All right, we're going to wrap up the sixth round with these final six players. We have Matt Carpenter, Jameson Taillon, Lorenzo Cain, Aroldis Chapman, Tommy Pham, and Madison Bumgarner. Your thoughts, if any, on that group of six?
Well, Matt Carpenter certainly has his history with different types of injuries that have really hampered him and riddled his past. So, but Matt Carpenter, what he did last year was just phenomenal. And I think at 67, I mean, I think that's about right. Arguably, he was the best offensive player in the National League. And if you throw out his terrible April and May, I think in one league I actually dropped him. I dropped him in a league. Yeah.
Ridiculous. Wow. You regretted that.
Yeah. I think Carpenter is fine at 67. Jameson Taillon, he's interesting. I have to look into his numbers a little bit more. I've always been a big fan of him, but I don't know if he's like a type of guy you can count on for more than 200 strikeouts from year to year going forward. The Caper 9, I think, is about 9, not much better than that. And I know he had a great second half of the season, but he's always had the pedigree. And now he's had a few years in a row where he's been durable and healthy. Most recently, he had that thing where he was undergoing cancer treatments, and I forget what type of cancer that was. But that's Lorenzo, yeah, okay, yeah, Lorenzo Cain. He's interesting here. He's always going to be between rounds like 5 to 7, it seems, and he can provide you with about 15 home runs, maybe 25 to 30 steals, and a pretty good average. And that's a good lineup, very underrated lineup, which we saw. I mean, they made the playoffs last year, and they weren't expected to. So I think that's fine value there. Aroldis Chapman at 70. I think that's about right. I wouldn't take him over the relievers that have the much better control, the ones that won't give you the heart attacks as much as Chapman will. Even Kimbrel does it sometimes, but Chapman Chapman's not a pitcher; he's just a thrower. But having said that, he's got the K potential. I still probably wouldn't take him at 70. Tommy Pham, his first couple of months of the season were a throwaway. He's a guy who strikes out a lot, a guy who's not in the best hitting situation, and it's a big ballpark too. So I would probably stay away from Pham here more than I would a guy like Ozuna. A few picks before. And Bumgarner is an interesting one. I don't know if he's all washed up and he's done, but if you look at his underlying stats and his His velocity is trending downward. I mean, he's a guy that's not moving in the right direction. For a guy who, how old is Bumgarner? Do you know?
Bumgarner, he's north of 30 now. I couldn't tell you offhand.
I'll figure that out. You talk about those players, and I'll research.
Okay, we got Matt Carpenter. I agree with everything you said about him. Remember position versatility. He's eligible at first, second, and third. So I think that will help his case. He did sacrifice his average last year for a lot of power, which if you're in fantasy baseball, you don't mind because he racked up a lot of home runs and RBIs. So I think Phil said 67 sounds about right. I wouldn't complain if I had to take him a little bit earlier to secure getting him. Jameson Taillon, this is a guy I've loved ever since he was the #1 pick by the Pirates several years back. He's always had great stuff and
great control, yeah.
Yeah, great control, which you gotta love. He's going to help your whip. I know the Pirates don't have. They're not playoff bound this year for sure. With their two big signings of Melky Cabrera and Francisco Liriano, but I think Jameson Taillon might be one of the few bright spots of that team this year. Lorenzo Cain, as I kind of sensed it in your voice, kind of ho-hum on him. Nothing to excite you. He'll get you some home runs. He'll get you some stolen bases. In that lineup, he'll get you some runs scored and RBIs. But he's not a guy who has top 50 potential. I think where he's slotted there at number 69 is about right. Aroldis Chapman, I agree with you. Number 70, closer. You can't really differentiate many of them at that point. Tommy Pham, interesting. This guy, I think, is someone he's a wild card here. I think he could finish top 50. I think he could finish out of the top 100. Now that he's got his vision problems under control, he's interesting. Like I said, he could be top 50 or out of the top 100. I really don't know what to make out of him. The physical talent is there. And Madison Bumgarner, I'm not crazy about him in this spot. The same way I'm not excited about Zach Greinke 20 picks earlier. I just think he's on the downside of his career.
Even though he's only 29, I mean the innings.
Is that what he is? Okay, I would have figured 30, 31. He's an old 29 because a lot of playoff appearances, a lot of
innings. Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah, like I said, I would have pegged him for like 30, 31.
There was that. Did he start 4 games or 3 games in one of those?
4, and then came in relief in Game 7. Yeah, so I mean, you gotta love what he's done in the past, but for 2019, I think we might be starting to see the downside of his career. So that's gonna do it for episode 1. Anything you'd like to add, Phil?
No, just I'll be doing the same thing. I'll be hosting a live stream in 2 weeks. We might take a different spin at this. Maybe we'll make it a little bit more interactive, get you guys involved in the live chat. But
yeah,
the idea was to focus on a lot of the breakout potential sleeper type guys, and we'll see. Might be players after this, or it might be slightly different. But
right, I know we didn't get to a lot of your guys' chat, and I apologize, but we really wanted to give the top 6 rounds of players, touch on a lot of them individually. We won't do that with the next 6 rounds of players that we go through, or however many we go through. We'll try to make it more interactive next time. But we really wanted to focus on those players. So I apologize if we missed any of your comments in the video. So again, we're going to be back at you 2 weeks from now. We'll probably do it in the same. I don't know. What do you think, Phil? Same time slot, 6 to 7, 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, probably 6 to 7 on, like you said, 2 weeks from now. So Friday, March 15th. So put it on the calendar, guys. Thank you, Mark. I said, see you guys. It was fun. So Mark from Kentucky, hopefully see you around in a few weeks. And at that time, we will have done much more research to provide even better insights because our fantasy league drafts are approaching.
Yes, they are. So we'll be brushing up on every sleeper and hedge player that we can over the next couple of weeks. All right, so I want to thank everyone for joining us, and hope to see you all again in 2 weeks. So thanks a lot.
Take care, guys. Thanks.
Appreciate you watching.